So when I watched The Secrets of Blackmoor, they talked a lot about the different ways that Dave Arneson's gaming group arrived at how they played a D&D campaign. They talked about the different ways they played Bronstein and other war games, which led me on a sort of introspective thought process of how could you play a campaign a little bit differently. And I think we've all heard about things like West Marches or having an open table. Then I talked to one of my players and we were talking about how you could implement a game where you have multiple adventuring parties and multiple DMs, but then one overseeing DM. So I started writing it up and I came up with some rules. I don't know if they're going to work. I haven't tried it out yet, mostly because I don't have the time, although I think after winter in the spring, I might try to implement something like this, give it a shot to see if it works. But I started working on it and I took a lot of inspiration and elements from the Blackmoor First Fantasy campaign book. I took a lot of implements from the OD&D and I just started messing with it. So I'm just going to take you through what I've come up with. Maybe it's something that you want to try with some DMs that you know, and if you have a lot of players, this might be something kind of cool. So let's take a look at it. It also might be ridiculous and a complete failure, in which case that'd be cool too, because it's something different. I'm Tristan, this is Heroes and Homebrew. Okay, so the working title right now is Rising Empire Campaign Rules. It's not a great title. I will try and come up with something better, but for now, it works. And this is sort of a way to have different nations sort of competing against each other, where you have like DMs playing sort of high-level domain play and adventuring parties underneath them. It's kind of like a D&D version of a pyramid scheme. So this is just like an introduction that I wrote, basically explaining what I just explained. So, step one, you need to decide on a system. Whether you're using OD&D or you're using Basic Fantasy RPG or DCC or any other fantasy game, everyone needs to be playing on the same system. And if you implement house rules, those house rules have to be played by all the players. All the DMs have to agree to these house rules, and they all need to be implemented in the same way so that the game stays fair across all the different aspects of it. You're going to have a campaign referee and territory referees. So the campaign referee oversees the whole world as a whole. They'll be in charge of if adventuring parties want to travel from one nation to another, and they'll be in charge of regulating any warfare or disputes between nations. The territory D&D territory referees are responsible for running their own nations. They are responsible for running the players, the adventure parties that are currently in their nations through whatever adventures they're given. They are responsible for handling their income that comes in from adventuring parties bringing back gold or from collecting taxes. They are in charge of maintaining their armies and their land. So each territory on the map will have its own referee. This is the territory referee. This referee will run sessions only in their territory. So they cannot run sessions in other territories, in other nations. They are the de facto ruler of the kingdom, barony, or duchy, whatever size it may be. It's suggested that the territories start no bigger than about 200 square miles, with a central keep and several small towns surrounding it. Of course, as play goes on, these borders can expand or contract depending on what goes on between the nations, any wars or border disputes, things like that. The reason for this is it should be the goal of the territory referees to accumulate wealth, expand their territory, and build more keeps or castles and cities. And with each of these, there will be, people put in place to run them. Now, these people could be NPCs or they could be other players who come in and act as DMs for those cities. But I would say keep it small and simple at first, and then you can expand on it afterwards. These baronies and referees will hire adventuring parties to go out into the wilderness and explore dungeons and bring back gold and make the surrounding areas safe for expansion. So I thought the best way to implement this at first is to keep it small, to keep it to about 3 or 4 territory referees. And then as the campaign world expands and it becomes more explored, you can bring more in if you want, or keep it to those few people. Now, the territory referees begins play with 3d6 times 1,000 gold for their coffers. Additionally, territory referees start with 1d6 times 100 infantry, 1d6 times 10 archers, and 1d4 times 10 cavalry. So they each start with very small armies in very small territories, but as they accumulate the wealth, they'll be able to purchase more men and more fighters and soldiers and whatnot to expand their military clout. In addition, the campaign referee must keep track of significant events and the collection of taxes and other assets gained by the territory referees. Once a month, the gold collected will be distributed to the territory referees and used as they see fit. So the idea is that this campaign referee would keep track of the towns, the size of towns and populations, and how much gold and taxes they would be bringing in. And then once per month, allot that gold to the territory referees, be like, okay, this territory is getting X amount of gold, this territory is getting X amount of gold, and say, okay, you've now received your taxes. Should they decide to build or raise armies, they will indicate this to the campaign referee. So the territory referees say, hey, I want to purchase X number of troops. I want to start building a new keep over here. And the campaign referee will keep track of that. Territory referees should have no knowledge of the wealth or capabilities of other territories unless that information is given freely by the other referees or acquired through espionage. So they should be blind to how much money and the size of other armies. They shouldn't know unless they've, the other referees have given that information, or they have somehow managed to send in spies to get that information. Now, for obvious reasons, you need to keep a shared calendar so everyone can track the passage of time. A strict calendar should be kept and shared by all referees. This may ultimately be the most difficult aspect of the campaign. It may or may not. To me, I think it might be tracking the time might be the most difficult thing, because that means each referee has to say, okay, I ran a session and it progressed X number of days, and so the campaign referee needs to track that as well. Having one document that everyone can edit might help, but it does mean that you have to make sure that these times are not advancing too far ahead of each other. So in the event of war, the events of that war need to occur at the same time at each table that plays in this campaign. So if one referee says, I'm going to attack this place on this date, everyone needs to have caught up to that date for that to happen. It may be necessary to refuse to allow a party to adventure until others have caught up in the calendar. So you don't want one party being 6 months ahead of another party. Should this happen, adventurers may choose to plan their next move for when they can play again, but no time will pass for them. If a party is days or weeks behind the others, They may decide to use that time to rest or partake in downtime activities, thereby speeding up the passage of time on the calendar. So if you have one party that's 3 weeks behind the others, they can say, okay, for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to do some magical research. I'm going to, carouse, what have you. I'm going to train just to make it, okay, well, now you've caught up, and this is what happened during that downtime. At the end of every session, the adventuring party must return to their home. This is essential. It's kind of like the West Marches or an open table idea is they go out, they adventure, they come back. If you go through a session and you manage to play out 4 weeks of time, that's fine, but they still need to end up back at their home base. Or at least back at another town. But if that happens, that party has to adventure together, or people who are in the same town have to adventure together. You can't have a party in one town and a party in another town and the two of them together. No party may end a session in the wilderness or dungeon. This avoids issues such as missing players at the next session and helps track time. Between sessions, game time will be counted as real time. So if there's a week passes between game sessions, a week passes in game time. For example, if 7 days pass between sessions in real time, then 7 days pass for the party in game time, and they can use that time how they wish. If more than 3 weeks pass between sessions for a party, then time will freeze for them until they play again. If a territory referee employs espionage tactics against another territory, the results of the mission will only be known to them after the appropriate amount of time has passed. For example, if the mission takes 9 days to succeed or fail, the territory referee must wait that long to get word of their mission. So if a territory referee tells the campaign referee, hey, I want to send spies to this town to try and gather this information, the campaign referee can play that out outside of the knowledge of the territory referee and not give the results of that mission to them for however long that mission took. Territory referee against whom the mission was taken will become aware immediately of the results if depending on what the mission was, and if it makes sense that they would get news of the incursion. So if spies get sent to a town from one nation and they're sent to another nation's town, if they're caught, the territory referee will be told right away, hey, spies were caught trying to infiltrate this place, or there was a attack and something blew up here. But that amount of time still needs to pass. So even if that territory referee says, okay, well, I'm going to retaliate, they still have to wait that amount of time. Player notes and maps. Players will be responsible for mapping dungeons as they explore, as well as mapping the wilderness. Notes and maps should be shared among other players in the same baronies or parties. For instance, if 2 players are working for a territory referee, they may share information they have gained between each other. They may not share it with parties currently in other baronies, or nations, or duchies, or what have you. I just used baronies. Until those parties come to the same area and meet. These maps do not need to be given for free, and adventuring parties may ask for payment. The accuracy of the maps should never be confirmed by the campaign referee, and uncertainty about their accuracy should always be maintained. So if a party goes into a dungeon, they need to be responsible for mapping that dungeon, but the accuracy of that map will never be given. You'll never be told that is a perfect representation of the dungeon, or this is wrong, or that's wrong. Same with the wilderness. That's how they map it. That is how that information is going to disseminate. So people might have 2 different parties might go to the same dungeon and have 2 different maps, and they'll have to decide which one is more accurate. So now we go to the construction. Constructing keeps, town buildings, or defenses may proceed using any rules given in the decided upon rule set. So if you're playing AD&D and it's got its own construction rules, or basic fantasy RPG and it's got its own construction rules, use those rules. Should there be an ambiguity, then the referees should decide together on construction rules. The cost of materials may vary based on availability and distance from the construction site. Roads may need to be built before a quarry can be exploited or timber transported. Territory referees wishing to begin construction can outline their plans for construction and how they plan to transport materials to the campaign referee. Mines can be dug and explored for precious gems or ore. However, as with all construction that requires a workforce, referees of territories will need to ensure they have available workers to take on any projects they plan. Territory referees may work together to create trade routes to bring materials between territories. So you can create like a trade between nations. Like, I have access to iron, you have access to timber that I don't have. Let's come up with an arrangement. And so if they come up with an arrangement, these arrangements need to be given to the campaign referee. Expansion. As with all nations, the referees of the baronies should look to expand and claim land. The easiest way to do this is to explore and settle unexplored wilderness. Adventuring parties will need to be sent out to clear each area before it is settled. Once the area is cleared and a fort, village, or other permanent claim on the land is constructed, it becomes part of their territory and taxes may be collected, etc. But any land, may be subject to dispute. Other territory referees may decide to invade and conquer land held by someone else, or indeed orc armies or barbarians may raid and destroy encroaching development. It is up to the referees of each territory to maintain an army capable of protecting their interests. So if a territory referee decides to expand and they don't have a way to defend that expansion, that land can be taken over by monsters or other armies or other territories. It is all in flux and it's all subject to war, essentially, which brings us to step 7, which is war. War is always a threat. Referees may create alliances either through marriage or trade or any other means that are mutually beneficial. Contracts, treaties, or trade agreements may be drawn up and signed. Yes, I put in actually writing out contracts that state what exactly is going to happen, what this treaty means, etc. However, there is nothing stopping one territory referee from invading neighboring lands. Their armies may march across the land, destroying everything in their way unless stopped. Whether these battles last a week or a decade is up to the parties involved. Adventuring parties may be hired by these warring nations to carry out special missions, though that would affect how the rest of the world views them should their actions become public knowledge. So you can, if you have 2 territory referees who are currently at war, they can hire adventuring parties to say, hey, I need you to get into this land, and I need you to attack this place, or sabotage something. In which case, that would be the campaign referee who plays that session. But if that party is found out to be working with that territory, they may never end up being able to work for the other territory referee or the other nation. So all these actions have consequences. The rules for mass combat should be decided on before the start of the campaign. The campaign referee will oversee any battles that take place during wartime. Just say there's multiple different versions of mass combat rules, whether you're using chainmail or you're using a battle system or what have you. You need to decide on that beforehand and make sure everyone understands the rules. Now, some other considerations. The goal of this campaign is to have a living world that all players take part in. Whether they are referees engaging in domain play or players exploring dungeons, these will be living, breathing characters in the world, just like we all hope our games are, right? As such, relationships may be formed and family trees may grow, so you can create families among the characters. As a character dies, their progeny, should they have any, may take their place as an adventurer. It is also possible for player characters to reach a point where they wish to engage in domain play or even make a move to remove someone from power. It is nearly impossible to cover every event, and it is beyond this document to do so. There's so many different things that could happen. I didn't put rules for everything in there. Basically, this is just a skeleton of rules of how you could go about doing this. Basically, the rules I would use But of course, they can be interpreted and changed and used however you wish if you were to do this. Just know that the campaign referee should consider these things well in advance and make it clear to all involved, referees and players alike, that there may come a time when something terrible happens to their characters, and remind everyone it is just a game. Referees of territories should be encouraged to create characters as offspring of their ruler, and players may be encouraged to do the same. That was just an overview of the basic steps of it. This document goes into a lot more detail and other stuff. We're going to go through it quickly. But that was just the basis of it. So you have your campaign referee who's overseeing pretty much the whole world. And then you have your 3 or 4 territory referees who are basically just running their little area. And they can interact between each other however they like. The game world. The map of the game world will be created by the campaign referee. Each territory referee will only have a map of their territory and a small portion of the surrounding area. So you have, this is your area, and then maybe a couple of 100 square miles around it. As territory referees expand their territory, more of the map will be made available to them. Maps will be drawn on hex paper or whatever software you want to use for it. The scale can be agreed upon among the referees, but it is suggested to use 5 or 6 mile hexes. Territory referees may send delegations to neighboring territories to gain copies of maps of those territories. Whether this is successful comes down to politics and whether the other referee wants to share their map. Though the campaign referee will place ruins, dungeons, and other points of interest in the various territories, that's to start. So at the start, it'd be like, here's your territory. Your capital, if you will, is here, your keep. There's a couple of towns here, and here are some points of interest. But it is the territory referees will be free to create dungeon maps as they wish. So if the campaign referee says, well, right here there's some ruins, it'll be up to the territory referee to say, okay, I'm going to build these ruins. However, the campaign referee will allocate the gold value of each dungeon. So if the campaign referee will say, there's ruins right here. Inside these ruins, there is 50,000 gold pieces. So then the territory referee needs to stick to that and say, okay, well, I can only place 50,000 gold pieces in this dungeon. It doesn't say it, but I think it goes without saying that the territory referee can't say, okay, well, this dungeon is only one room and is completely unguarded and there's 50,000 gold in it, just because they're going to get a percentage of it. You kind of have to play the game, if you will. Campaign referee will also be responsible for any monster hordes in the territories. These hordes may attack settlements or have lairs nearby. Other threats may exist, such as bandits, pirates, cults, and necromancers. Just because a territory is considered settled doesn't mean it is completely safe, and it will be up to the territory referees to send adventuring parties to deal with these threats. But they must do so impartially. If a party fails, they must accept this and report it to the campaign referees so that they may decide on the consequences. So you have to play fair. You can't say, hold a session, because the campaign referee can't sit in on every session, and it's unreasonable to expect that. But the territory referees have to be fair and say, okay, well, I ran a session and it was a TPK. They didn't come back with anything, and the horde of orcs is still advancing. Using published adventures. The use of published adventures should be avoided, but it is not forbidden. If all referees agree to their use, they may be used freely. However, a published adventure may not be used twice, even if it is in a different territory. So if you do use published adventures, say things like basic fantasy RPG adventures, you can use them, just don't use the same one more than once, even if it's in a different territory. Gold and magic items. The territory referee ruler has a claim to all gold and magic items found in their territory. This is how they accumulate more wealth besides just taxes. There are other ways as well, but for now, they do not take all the gold found, but a percentage. This percentage will usually be negotiated with the adventuring party, but could be anywhere from 20 to 50%. So 20% would be I would suggest 20%, but it could end up being 50% depending on a variety of things. And first pick of any magic items. Magic items should be handed out to adventurers sparingly, but never restricted completely. Additionally, a bank should be made available to adventurers to keep their gold. Adventurers should also keep a will to pass on their fortune in the event of their death. Land grants. Land may be granted in a territory when an adventurer reaches no less than 9th level. This land may not be more than 1 hex, 6 miles, or 5 miles if you're using a 5-mile hex, but they may use it in any way they wish. Official contracts may be drawn up to prove the validity of the grant. However, the adventurer would be responsible for protecting it if need be. So if a adventurer gets to 9th level, the territory referee can say, hey, you know what? You have done a lot of great work for me. Here's a 6-mile hex. You are now the ruler of it. Do with it what you will. But you still have to pay taxes, generally. Maybe the territory referee will say you don't have to pay taxes, but that's up to them. Armies. Adventurers may raise armies if they can pay for them. This will, however, arouse a suspicion of the local lord and may lead to warfare. So they can raise an army, but the territory referee might be like, The territory referee may allow parties to raise an army with the understanding that they would be a militia for the territory. Should this happen, that party may become an enemy of any hostile territories. An army may not be more than 15% of the total population of the territory. That goes for everyone. So you can't have more than 15% of your population as your army, because then it would be too easy to just press everyone who lives in your territory into being in the military. Mercenaries. Territory referees may hire mercenaries to conduct more clandestine missions. These can be player characters acting as mercenaries or non-player characters that the territory referee can employ. The campaign referee will play out these scenarios on their own and tell the territory referees about the results after the proper amount of time has passed. So it's a way of allowing the campaign referee to do, something fun solo on their own without their job only being bookkeeping. Inventions and discoveries. Inventions and discoveries are a mark of progress. In game terms, this means that one territory may become more technologically advanced than another, unless this technology is shared. Anything from firearms and cannons to airships and submarines may be invented with enough time and money and the right dice rolls. To create an invention, a territory referee must hire engineers to study and test. Rules may be decided on concerning the time and resources needed to make an invention come to fruition. Once the first invention is created, others may quickly follow. This could possibly change the face of the world. So I didn't actually put in hard and fast rules for inventions, because some games have their own rules for that. And it could come down to the campaign referee saying, okay, well, if you're studying this, it's going to take X amount of gold, X amount of time, and you're going to have to make some rolls, like your engineer will have to make some intelligence rolls or wisdom rolls or what have you. The campaign referee may choose to allow a discovery to be made without the previous knowledge of the territory referee. So the campaign referee can be like, hey, you've stumbled upon how to, blow up a balloon and have it carry something to make an airship. These discoveries should be few, but it is perfectly rational to assume that a discovery can be made without the effort to invent it. Just like everyday life. Discoveries are made without someone sitting down for years to try and invent something. Magical research. A territory referee may pay for a magic user in their court to research magical spells or craft items. The time and cost associated with this will proceed according to the rule set being used for the game. Again, lots of games have their own rules for this. That's why I did not make any. Player characters in adventuring parties may also conduct research for their own benefit using those same rules. Any discoveries they make can be sold either to territory referees or other players at a cost set by the player. Hirelings, basically same as most other rules. You hire according to the rules you have. Territories. When a territory is chosen by a referee to be ruled by them, they become responsible for its development. Towns, villages, even Banners will be created by the territory referee. So there's lots of random tables to create a banner and things like that and create your towns. The campaign referee will dictate how many towns or villages there may be in the territory and their size and any resources available in the territory. Once the basics have been given to the territory referee, they will be responsible for bringing it to life. This, of course, can be cooperative with the campaign referee or alone. Notes must be made and given to the campaign referee so that they may track the developments over time. So the campaign referee will say, okay, well, here in this territory you have a mountain range. There's a possibility of iron or copper or silver in these mountains. You have a forest over here you can exploit for wood, things of that nature. And you have 3 towns. One's a town, one's a village, and one is a city, what have you. And plus you have your keep. Declarations of war. Now it's getting a little more political. Nations war, there's no way around it. A territory referee may want to commit their troops to war or use guerrilla tactics to maintain deniability. Should all-out war become a reality, a territory referee may write an official declaration of war and include their demands for peace to be a reality. Make no mistake, open warfare can and will have grave consequences and may change the face of the world forever. I talked about that before. It could go on for years in game terms. Treaties and contracts. Territories may engage in trade contracts, alliance treaties, and all manner of other official business. These will be drawn up and signed by both parties. They will become, in game terms, binding. Breaking these contracts could lead to fines or even war. Be careful with whom you do business. However, they can also lead to long-term prosperity for both nations. So I wanted the treaties and the contracts to be a real thing. I wanted there to be a paper trail to say, like, these two nations are bound together in writing, and this contract in game terms can last for years. But if it's broken, there should be something written in it about if this contract's broken or if this treaty is broken, this is what's going to happen. I think it adds a bit of sort of political realism that kind of gets the buy-in of the territory referees as well, for them to be like, well, okay, well, you and you, like, we're gonna have a political treaty, and we're both going to try and take out this nation. Because I mentioned it later on, but the nations could be any alignment. You could have a chaotic nation where the territory referee is like, you know what, I want armies of goblins and orcs and undead, and I am going to spread this across the world. I do have some sort of solo play. It's not really solo. It's more of just the territory referees and the campaign referee kind of playing on their own and running the adventuring parties if you don't have enough players. All right, so now we go into the nitty-gritty and the tables and stuff. So creating armies. Territorial armies will be broken down into percentages of the whole. For example, an army may be 40% infantry, 20% pikemen, 15% archers, 25% cavalry. Territory referees may decide how they would like to break down their armies based on factors such as cost of training and upkeep, defense, etc. So it's not going to be like you're only allowed to have this, this, and this. Territory referee could say, I want my entire army to be footmen, or I want my entire army to be archers, or I only want a navy. I don't want any land troops at all. It's completely up to them. What follows is a cost breakdown of equipment and personnel costs that should be used when building armies. As a territory grows and brings in more taxes and citizens, so can armies. So I started off with this from the First Fantasy campaign book, and I just altered it a bit. I added some extra stuff to it, like we have pistols and muskets, siege tower, things like that. I added a couple of other things to it. This is the cost for territory referees for one of these things. So if you want one heavy cannon, it's 170 gold pieces. And then magical weapons are this. So if you want a magical longbow, it would be 30 times 100 for research and creation. And you have your armor and transportation, wagon, merchant ship, warhorse, camel, small wagon, draft horse, raft, galley, large horse, elephant. And of course, there are a lot of other things you can add on to that as your campaign grows. You can have airships, submarines, like all kinds of things. And creatures of transport, wyvern, griffin, rock, and giant eagles. Personnel, this covers everything from you have your creature trainers, armorers, tax collectors, priests, a naval captain. Also, say like one archer is 15 gold per year. It might seem low if you look at sort of the hireling costs, but again, this is for a territory referee who is also basically paying to house and feed these troops. So then you'd have your archer, you'd have to buy him his armor and his weapon. So it adds up. It continues on with assassins, creature rider, administrator, all those guys. Construction, this is just base amounts to construct a castle or a keep. In the fantasy or first fantasy campaign book, there's 3 types of castles. I use those types of castles. I called them type A, type B, type C instead of 1, 2, 3, and I redrew them myself. I think I altered the prices too, if I'm not mistaken. So you have a round tower is 4,500 gold, etc. Composition of castle residence. This I took from OD&D. So if a fighter owns a castle, there's a 25% chance of having a magic user and a 50% chance of having a cleric, and the various levels, and so on and so forth. Magic user, cleric, those percentage chances. 30 to 180 men will also patrol the castle walls. 25% of these guards are armed with spears and the rest with crossbows. Optionally, 50% may man cannons and the rest armed with muskets. Or presumably you could do cannons and crossbows or longbows, however you want. This is just an example, really. Demi-human soldiers, again, halflings, dwarves, elves, heroes, superhero. An army may have 1 hero per 100 soldiers, 1 superhero per 1,000 soldiers, and 1 magic user per 100 soldiers, and 1 cleric per 50 soldiers. And now you have fantasy creatures. So this is where you can have your chaos nation employing goblins and orcs, wraiths, werewolves or lycanthropes, ogres, all that kind of thing. So a territory referee can absolutely create that territory for themselves. And there's rules for how many lycanthropes, trolls, and dragons you can have per in an army as well. Marching armies. Marching a large army is a slow process. Groups of 100 troops or more marching in an open terrain will move at minus 10% of the base rate of the slowest troop. Groups of 1,000 troops or more will move at minus 60% of the base rate of the slowest troop. An army can march for 7 days, but then must rest for 1 full day. Settlements and infrastructures is more stuff I got from the First Fantasy campaign book. I think I did a video on it that I will maybe link to if I remember to link to it. But you can go find it in my videos. So settlements and infrastructure, building towns and cities and maintaining the infrastructure is the responsibility of the territory referee. Use the following rules and tables for ideas on how to implement this during play. So we have the cost of roads. It's 900 gold per mile. It takes 900 hours to build a mile, and it costs 10% of the total cost per year for upkeep. So this is per 1 person. So it would take 1 person 900 hours to build 1 mile of road. But then I've stated that you can have that by doubling the amount of people. So 2 people, it would take 450 hours. 4 people, it would take 225 hours, etc. And it's the same thing for bridges, canals, mines. I put in percentage rolls for mining, so mines have a 20% per day chance of striking a vein of ore and 10% of discovering a gem per worker. So if you have 100 workers, there's almost 100% chance, or each worker has a 10% chance of finding a gem, or it can be extracted at a rate of 1 pound per day. I kind of just made that up. I have no idea how much time it would actually take to extract ore, but it seemed like an easy number to deal with. And then should you strike a metal, you roll a d100 to find out what it is. And same with gems, roll a d100. I put rules for morale in settlements. Settlements are subject to morale rolls to maintain peace and order. Once per month game time, the campaign referee will roll morale for each settlement. When a territory has more than 5 settlements, morale will be rolled for groups of settlements in close proximity. So if you have a large territory and there's like groups of settlements that are relatively close to each other, you can just group them up together and roll morale for them. Morale will be adjusted by tax rate above 4 gold pieces per month per person, and the number of attacks by monsters or armies. So if these settlements are getting attacked by monsters or another nation's army has attacked them, that's going to affect the morale roll as well. So the morale equals 2d6 minus taxes above 4 gold pieces a month. So if it's 5 gold pieces a month per person, it would be -1, minus the number of attacks per month, and plus settlement building adjustment. So I have a table of what different buildings in each settlement add to the morale roll. The result below 8 means townsfolk are unhappy. A result of 1 to 2 means the townsfolk will begin to plan a rebellion. A -1 per month of rebellion will be applied to all subsequent rolls. So every time you roll a morale after that, you're going to have a -1. So if that town's been rebelling for 1 month, it'll be -1. If they've been rebelling for 2 months, -2. Lowering tax rates, increasing security, and providing much needed goods and services to a settlement can help quell a rebellion. Next, it goes into how much settlement buildings would cost. So you have a small house, a large house, which houses don't add to morale rolls because they're dwellings. Temple will add +1, a library adds +1, school adds +1, and a court or jail adds +2 because it provides law and order. So these are rules for inns. I got these from the First Fantasy campaign book. I've changed them a little bit. Not too much, though. It's pretty similar. I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but basically you can build an inn for 2,500 gold pieces and then stock it with whatever you need. Hunting and farming. A lot of this stuff, the hunting and farming, the tourists, came from the First Fantasy campaign, which I've altered it for this. But it was all very good stuff that I found in there, so that's why I was like, well, if I'm going to have a campaign like this, these rules kind of need to be in there, and it provides options for the territory referees to sort of rule and expand their territories. Tourism. So for every 100 gold pieces spent on advertising, so you can advertise all over the nation, in other nations, 1 tourist will visit per year and spend 50 to 500 gold pieces in the town. As long as they leave the area without any danger, they will return the following year and bring a friend, so you can just keep accumulating. New residents, new people will arrive during the warm months of the year to settle. As long as there are roads coming to the town, there will be an annual increase of 2 to 4% of the total population from new arrivals, not including visitors from tourism who have settled in town. So tourists, if they come over the course of 10 years, they'll end up settling. Every additional road adds 1% to this population's growth, up to a total of 6%. So you can have up to 6% population growth. Trade is essential both between settlements and in the same nation and between nations. For this reason, territory referees may wish to establish reliable trade to increase their wealth and power. So a merchant ship can carry 300 pounds and travel up to 200 miles per day. A wagon, 600 pounds and travel up to 20 miles a day. A wagon has a 1 in 6 chance of being attacked by bandits per week of travel. Merchant ship has a 2 in 6 chance of being attacked by pirates per week of travel. These possibilities may change depending on security provided and the safety of the route. Routes regularly patrolled by a militia or navy will lower the chances to 1 in 8 and 2 in 8, respectively. So then it goes into how much profit traders will get for the things they trade, and these are the costs. Prices shown is how much the trader will earn. So if they have an elephant, they'll earn 110 gold pieces. I think I might have to rework that a bit. Weapon and armor construction. The time it takes to make a particular weapon or piece of armor can vary. However, this list will give some idea of time needed for construction by a skilled crafter. So, swords 1 day, bows 5 days, crossbow 14 days, leather armor 7 days, chainmail 30 days, plate 40 days. Taxes. Tax rates will be set up by territory referees. A suggested tax rate is 1 to 4 gold pieces per adult per month. Collectors may be employed to collect the taxes of each settlement and transport it back to the capital. There is a 20% chance of a collector skimming 5% of the taxes collected for their own benefit. Whether soldiers pay taxes is up to the territory referee. So you can have your tax collectors collecting taxes. Like, you don't have to roleplay it out. It is if you employ tax collectors, they will collect the taxes from the town. It'll be automatic. However, the campaign referee will roll secretly to find out if any of the tax collectors are skimming money off the top. So it'll be up to the territory referees to kind of know what they should be getting in taxes, and then say if they're like, oh, I'm supposed to be getting 20,000 gold in taxes this month, and the campaign referee says, here's your 18,000 gold, then the territory referee is going to have to start thinking, okay, well, where's that other 2,000 going? Population. To make life easy, population split should be 50-50 male to female. It just makes life so much easier. This can, of course, be modified as players see fit. 70% of a town's population should be adults of fighting age, 20% children under the age of 18, and 18% elderly over the age of 60. Law and order. Laws can be decided by the territory referees either for their realm or for individual settlements. So the territory referees, they don't need to be an exhaustive list of laws, but at least, like, murder is legal, theft is legal, so on and so forth, and have punishments for each one of those things. It is wise to remember that the more freedom citizens lose and the harsher the punishments, the more likely that there will be a rebellion. Laws must be posted in a visible area in each town. It's just, like, you don't have to roleplay that. It's just yes, I've posted my laws. Restrictive laws or severe punishments cause -1 to town morale rolls. Religions of different territories may vary greatly. Additionally, different nations may share a common religion. Clerics can travel from town to town and spread the commonly held religion of the capital. Places of worship in towns help maintain settlement morale as well. The presence of temples adds a +1 to morale rolls. And that is it. So I know that was sort of a lot of words, but ultimately, it was sort of an exercise that I had for myself to say, okay, well, can I create a structure to run sort of a political and nation-scale game while at the same time running low-level dungeon crawling games? And I think you can do it. You could, like, do it with this or with your own rules. But it's kind of a getting back to the very, very beginning of D&D, like how how it progressed through these different stages of war games and political games to come at D&D, and it's a way of getting, okay, well, we have multiple groups, we have multiple DMs. Is there a way we can get it all to be one world and all sort of interconnected? Like I said, if and when I attempt to run this, it might be a complete failure. It was fun for me to write out. I enjoyed it, but it might not work at all. But if you're interested in doing this, if you have the people who would be willing to do this, and you want the PDF that I wrote out, just let me know, and I'll get it to you, either post it or shoot me your email address. I'll email it out or something. And I'd be really curious what your ideas are for it. How would you change it? How would you implement it? Would you be willing to run this? And if you do end up running this, if you ask for this PDF or you create one yourself, I want to hear like how it went for you. It's just, I think it'd be a kind of cool experiment. That's the way I view it. It's an experiment. It could go wrong. It could be great. It's an experiment, and it's for fun. See how you can do it. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed that. I know it was a bit of a long one, a bit wordy, but let me know in the comments what you think. I'd love to hear your ideas on this and see if it works at all. Save a seat for me at your table.